Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome. Colchester Recall, we have some newcomers who we welcome. Is an oral history group, and we have monthly meetings in what used to be normal times, and we do recordings of people about their life and times in Colchester, but we haven't done a single interview for over a year, and that is some kind of 35-year record. For all the obvious reasons. So we've got a busy, packed meeting tonight. So without any further ado, as they say, I'm going to hand over to Patrick, who's going to introduce tonight's oral history special. Patrick.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew, and welcome everyone to the meeting. Again, we're going to do it in two parts. We'll have our oral history section to start with, and then we'll have our talk following that. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, or I should say speakers this evening, and it's the Conway family. And to be more precise, it's Rita Conway, who's going to be interviewed live in front of us by her son Philip and her daughter Rebecca. Now, I've known the Conways for many, many years, decades even, and in 2017, I interviewed Rita, and her interview is now part of the Colchester Recall archive. But last month, and for the last few months, Rita and her family have been attending some of our Zoom meetings. And last month, you may remember we had Harry Carlow talking about his Second World War memories. And that sparked a few memories in Rita herself. And at the end of the meeting, after some people had gone, a few people stayed behind, and Rita started reminiscing about her memories. And I think it was Ray Allen, I'm not sure, but somebody said, oh, we could sit here all night and listen to this, Rita. So we thought it'd be a good idea to have a special little session where we can hear a bit of interview. We can just sort of listen in to see what's happening. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rebecca, who will introduce Rita and start the interview rolling. So over to you, Rebecca, and you can unmute yourself. That's it.
Thank you. So this is our mum, Rita Conway, born Rita Smith in November 1932. So where were you born, Mum?
I was born in Lexton Maternity Home along London Road.
So you're the original Essex girl,
I'm
Mum?
the original Essex girl.
Great, okay. So we're just going to start by looking at this book here. I think you can all see that. It's the History of Colchester Golf Club from 1907 to 2007. So if we open up the book right at the beginning, so going right back to 1907, there's a picture of this lady here, who was the first stewardess of Colchester Golf Club.
So, Patrick, you can show the photograph number one.
So, Mum, who is this glamorous lady in relation to you?
This is my grandmother, Florence Amos, and she was, as you say, the stewardess of the Colchester Golf Club on Burcott Road.
Okay, so this picture here, you've got the big picture in your dining room, and that picture was used in the book. So it's quite unusual for there to be a stewardess. Right at the beginning of the Colchester Golf Club. So that's a great bit of local history for us.
And the picture below is one of her sons, Gordon. So Patrick, if you could go on to the next picture.
Number two.
Picture number two, yeah. So this is a few years on. So Florence is now the elderly lady. Tell us about this picture, Mum.
Well, this is my grandparents, Florence and Thomas Amos, and these are her 7 children. Oh,
so your mum is the lady
my mum's
at the back
behind the bride. That's my mother there.
Right. So Gordon, who we see in the golf club book, the guy in the middle there with the massive hair, he won a cup and was a champion at Colchester, but he wasn't even the best golfer. Yeah. So tell us a bit about Gordon first.
Well, Gordon actually was a train driver. He used to drive the train from Clacton to Liverpool Street on a daily basis.
And
And then,
so,
but then there was a strike of some sort, and I don't remember why they went on strike. But Gordon didn't join the strike, so he carried on taking people from Clacton to Liverpool Street. But the people on the train appreciated what he did, and they did a collection for him and paid his wages.
right. So he was a golfer, but he wasn't the best golfer. Tell us about the
The
others.
two behind Grandad,
On the right, the two
yes,
on the right.
yes, they were professional golfers and had their own golf links down in Surrey.
Yeah, so the early Essex County Standard wrote about them and how they left Colchester and became very successful. So your granddad there is bottom right.
Yes.
So if we could ask Patrick to go on to the next photograph.
Number 3, Patrick.
So,
Yes, that's my grandfather outside the Abberton line, or Langenhoe line as some people call it. But he was quite a character.
So he was the landlord.
Yes, he was the landlord with Nana, and yes, they kept the pub, Green King pub. But he was always interested in horses. His whole life was horses. He was groomsman for Daniel's brewery in the town. But during just after the First World War, Grandad used to go down to the North Station and collect damaged horses that they brought back from France that were shell-shocked and injured and absolutely terrified. And he'd bring them back to the Lion, put them in the meadow and give them lots of TLC and find them homes.
fantastic.
Right. So number 4.
Next
Number
photograph, please.
Number 4, Patrick. Please.
So,
This is me, Phil.
Yeah.
So this is again outside the Abberton Lion. So your grandfather and your mother and her siblings.
Oh yes,
lived-
they all rode.
So your mum and your 2 aunties were living here, and what were they known as?
They were known as the Lionesses. The 3 girls were known as the Lionesses
because they were at the Lion.
Yeah.
So this is we can see there a hunt.
Hunt outside, yes, outside
so
the Lion.
your mum, did she get
Well,
involved with the hunt?
Yes, she did more or less, but she didn't like it. She was never comfortable on a horse. Anyway, she joined the hunt on one occasion, and because she was the youngest, or the lady or whatever, she was given the brush. And that's supposed to be something very special, but my mother was absolutely horrified just to having this fox's tail presented to her. So she never rode again, never went with the hunt again.
good story.
Okay, so number 5, Patrick, please.
So still staying with the
Lion, yeah.
Langenhoe Lion. So the trams in Colchester stopped running in December the 9th, 1929. Tell us about this picture,
Well,
Mum.
Grandad somehow went to Colchester, bought a tram, brought it back to the Line, and between them and the people that worked at the Line, converted it into a little tea room. So there used to be homemade cakes and drinks and offered out, and they used to sit around outside drinking tea and having a lovely afternoon. I don't remember it like this. I only remember it when it was no longer a little restaurant-y type place. They used to keep chickens in it, and us girls and my cousins, we used to play in it. That's how I remember the tram.
Wow.
Great.
So how did he get it from Colchester
I've
all the
got
way?
no idea. I've got no idea how he got it. But anyway, it was a great success.
Wonderful. So that's your maternal side, Rebecca Ann.
Yeah, so we're moving now on to your paternal side, your father's side. So we're just going up the road a little bit from
Peldon.
Abberton to Peldon.
Yeah.
So a few miles along. So your
My father was born in Peldon.
right. So who is this lady?
She's my great-grandmother,
And her name was
Talbot.
Sarah,
Sarah Talbot.
and she was born in 1827.
Okay, yeah.
So she had 8
She
children.
married a Smith.
She married a
She married a
Smith,
Smith,
and became
yeah.
Sarah Smith, and she had 8 children. But what else do you know about her?
I don't remember her, obviously, but she...
Well, you weren't around in
No,
1827.
I was not that old. Don't be cheeky. Anyway, she was walking in Peldon, probably getting water from the pump outside the pub, and she saw this young girl hurrying down the road with a bundle in her arms. And she asked her where she was going, what she was doing. And she said she was going to drown this baby that she'd just had in the pond. So this great-grandmother of mine said, no, don't do that. Give it to me, and I'll bring it up with my family, which is what she did.
Yeah. So there's historical evidence of this in the 1901 census. Where your great-grandmother was, her name was Elsie Ham, and she's shown on the census as being adopted.
Yes, she was adopted.
She then went on to get married in 1928 in Abberton Church.
Well, she was 28.
Oh, sorry, she was 28. My mistake. She was 28, married in Abberton Church, and became part of the.
Yes, she was all
family.
part of the family.
So I noticed from one of the, I think, Mersey history, there was a Ham family in Peldon. Whether one of the Ham boys was the naughty one, we don't know. But anyway, we'll carry on.
So photo 7, Patrick, please.
So your dad.
Yes.
Peldon
boy.
A Peldon boy. So this next picture, you always thought that this was something to do with the Peldon footballers,
yes,
but I think we're looking at it again now. We don't think that's the case.
That's right.
So there's a cross in front of your dad, my granddad, and
must have been.
Sorry, carry on.
Well, it must have been during the war.
Yeah, so
when he first joined up.
First joined up. Sorry.
Do you want me to
how he joined up.
Him and 2 of his friends walked from Peldon into Colchester to the recruiting office and signed up for the First World War.
So that was November 1915. So what strikes me about that picture was all those young lads. Yeah. They're just a bunch of boys.
Mm.
So they did their training, and then if we move on, Patrick, to photo 8.
Why does it keep going back?
It's okay.
Photograph 8. So your father was posted to France.
Yes.
So we can see here the front right, where marked with the red cross, is your father.
Yeah.
So he has got his Lance Corporal stripe. So we think this is probably 1917. So did he speak about the war, Mum?
Not a lot. The only thing I remember him actually saying to us when he first got over in France in the trenches, he cried for his mother. Mm. But he didn't cope very well with the conditions they had in the trenches. So it was dreadful.
So Patrick, we go on to the next picture.
Number 9.
Number
Patrick.
9. So this is
again in France.
It's picture 9, Patrick.
Yeah.
So
here we go.
So he did mention to me as a boy, if I went to stay. It said very little about the First World War, but I remember him speaking about weeing or urinating on his socks and boots, and I couldn't really work out what that was about. But then years later, realised it was to ward off infection of trench foot. He's got his puttees on there and his Lance Corporal stripe. So he was discharged in March 1918. If we move on to, tell us about how he married your mum.
Well, he was invalided out of the army because he'd got heart problems and he'd got gas on his lungs and he was shell shocked. So he went into hospital, into the military hospital. Then we went back to Peldon. Then he met my mum at the Lion.
And a rounders match at the back of the Lion pub.
Yes, at the back, and they were all playing rounders, and they bumped into each other, and that was that.
But it was a bit sort of biblical, wasn't it, Mum? He didn't just marry her immediately. He had to wait, Jacob and Rachel or somebody.
Yeah, he had to wait a little while because my mother was nursing, and she absolutely loved her job, and ladies in those days did not work after they married. So he did have to wait a little while, but eventually they married, and within the year, they'd got my sister Pam.
So, and if we move on to the next...
10? Number 10,
Number
Patrick,
10,
please.
Patrick. So he then became
a postman.
A postman.
Well, he joined the post office, and first of all, he was a telegraph boy, and then he went into the post. Then he went into the post office. He's second from right.
Yes. So this is 1935, this picture. We've got a series of great photographs, but this is one of them. And the back of this photograph, April 1935, it says this: a slight appreciation of a good record with every good wish. Patrick Egan, we think it says there, head postmaster, 2nd of April 1935, no accidents, van drivers.
Yeah.
So,
Now, I remember my father in the little red van, a postman Pat van, and remember being in that, and it always smelt lovely.
but Mum and her postman, why aren't they wearing shorts?
Because in those days they were strict uniform days, and they were either very dark navy or black, and they'd got red stripes down the trouser legs and somewhere else on the uniform, but they were strictly uniform with their caps on.
Yeah, and on that picture he's got that fantastic leather jerkin, which
Yes.
I remember.
Still had.
So this is 1935. So moving on
Yeah.
a few years.
you
Thanks
can-
for that
You
photograph,
can take
Patrick.
the photo down, Patrick. So we're now moving on to the war years, Mum. So what do you remember about the outbreak of World War II?
Well, I remember the outbreak of the war. Daddy and Emma were talking about it, and I was absolutely terrified. And I think I spent all the war years very, very frightened. I didn't like it at all.
No, okay.
And what did your dad? So he's too old now.
Oh,
but
yes,
what
he
did he
took-
do?
He joined the Home Guard, sergeant in the Home Guard, with the post office platoon, I believe.
Yeah, I've got his signing up card here. Post office platoon. So he's a sergeant. Was he as posh as Sergeant Wilson, Mum?
Well, not quite, I don't think. But there was,
Was he as dashing as Sergeant
he
Wilson?
was. Oh yes, he always was absolutely brilliant in his uniform, and it used to have to be pressed, and his sergeant stripes sewn on properly, and all. It was a big palaver.
So Patrick, if we could have photo number 11 now, please. So you lived on Mersey Road, Mum. So
yes.
whereabouts on Mersey Road? And is the
Opposite-
house still there?
No, opposite Middlewick Rangers, now where the Willows stands.
Okay.
And but
so the house was demolished for the
yeah,
willows to be
that's
built.
right,
Okay.
yes,
So
yes.
you're the little girl in the white dress kneeling
Yes.
down
In both pictures.
in both pictures.
Yeah.
Now, who are the soldiers?
Well, the
in this?
soldiers were, that was the Ox and Bucks Regiment, and they were billeted on the Wick under canvas, but some of them were asked, Mum and Dad were asked if they could put these boys up, which of course my mother and father said yes. And so they came to live with us for a little while, and it was great fun because they were wonderful, wonderful gentlemen.
And the pumpkin there in
That
the
was at
second
Daddy's
photograph.
garden.
So this dates it to
Yes.
October 1939.
Yeah,
Getting ready for Halloween.
yes. But they were lovely because one could sing and one could play the piano.
And do we know what happened to these
Yes,
soldiers?
one
Mum?
of them, and I don't know which one it was killed at Dunkirk.
And the other
And-
one?
I don't know what happened to him.
Well, he
we
wrote
used to
to
write.
you.
Yeah, we used to write to him. We used to send them the Beano and the Dandy comics.
So this dugout here, that was where you would
Yeah,
go.
Daddy and his a few neighbours dug that, and it was a wonderful dugout because we got everything in there we needed, and that was going for years and years and years. Pop used to store his vegetables and things in that.
And that's your sister?
That's my
behind
sister
you?
Pam and
So-
my mummy.
So if ever there's a sinkhole on the entrance
There's
road to the Willows,
It's going to be the dugout.
It's going to be.
we'll find some of your old teddy bears down there.
Yes, I might.
Okay, so were you evacuated, Mum?
Yes, we were.
Where did you go?
We went to Rugby.
So rugby I think it was Harry, Carl, or one of the other gentlemen mentioned all the children going on the train. Were you on that train?
No, I wasn't because we went privately.
Oh, we went privately. Emma.
How did
Yes.
that happen, Mum? Why were
Well,
you...
because my grandfather knew one or two of the gentlemen. He was an engineer who worked on the reservoir,
building the
building the reservoir.
Abberton.
And so we got very friendly with
They
this
stayed at
family.
the line.
They stayed at the line while they were on the job, sort of thing. Anyway, they said, send Rita and Pam and Ivy up to us. We'll look after them. So we went to Rugby because that was where we were assigned to. But we went privately and stayed with these people in Rugby.
And what was that like, Mum?
Horrible. I was homesick. I cried for my father. I was as miserable as sin. dreadfully.
And then they bombed
homesick.
Coventry and they sent you back to Colchester.
Yes, they bombed. They blitzed Coventry while we were there. So Pop sent the money and we came home.
Now, Mum, you were right opposite the Wick, and I think in one of the other talks there was mention about searchlights being on Abbey Field, but you remember a searchlight being on the Wick.
Yes, there was one on the Wick, because when that was lit up, it was so exciting, and seeing an aircraft in the beam, we all, oh, it was wonderful. But there was only one. The majority of them were on Abbey Fields.
Okay.
Right, and so where did you go to school and school memories during the war, Mum?
Canterbury Road, and then on to Hamilton Road.
And air raid shelters?
Pardon?
Air raid.
Oh, yes, we used to have to go down the air raid shelter.
And you had your gas mask as
Yes,
well?
had gas masks.
Okay.
I always carried our gas mask with us.
So then you were evacuated again, Mum, weren't you?
Yes, but that was a bit of a cheeky one, really, because we only went to Coggeshall. My grandfather by then had left the line because that was too big for him to cope with, and he took over the fleet at Coggeshall, and we went there to live for a little while.
It was just over the border.
It was just within the border, so I was able to see. We were able to see Daddy every day, I was fine.
Right.
That was lovely.
So back at Mersey Road, though, Mum, 23rd of February 1944. What do you remember about that night?
Well, it looked as though the whole town was on fire. Sentry bombs dropped on St Bottle's Corner, and that was dreadful because it looked as though we'd got fires all around us because we could see the lights and things from down Harwich Way, and it was absolutely dreadful. But so that was a very frightening night for me.
So
because I thought it was it.
So you were a girl of 11 at this stage. So were you concerned about the strategic loss of the Paxman's engines destroyed at Britannia Engineering Factory?
No,
Did that
I'm
worry
afraid
you?
I wasn't. I was more concerned about Hancock's sweet shop being bombed, and which of course they did, and it was destroyed. But they used to get special sweets from there in little cone bags, the peppermint lockets. And they were a special recipe, which of course they all lost.
So it was a big
that
loss.
was a big thing for me.
Big loss for Colchester.
Turning point of the war, Mum.
Yes, it
So,
was.
Mum, do you remember? Did you see a V6, a Doodlebug?
Z6.
V1. That's because you've got V1 and it's like Roman number 6. I don't know anything about
Yes, that was
Doodlebugs.
it. Yeah, one hurled across the Wick one day, and I thought I was heading right for 172 Mersey Road, but Daddy put us in the cupboard under the stairs, so we were relatively safe.
You didn't have time to get to the dugout.
No, we didn't get time to go to the dugout. We were under the stairs.
Okay.
But I don't remember the engine stopping. That must have done because it fell near Lair Road, between Lair Road and Beerchurch Hall Road, somewhere near there.
So when I was a boy, the shed that was attached to the house, that had broken panes in the back, and Grandad said that was from when the Doodlebug came down.
So, Mum, the war finished. You survived, safe and sound. The Doodlebug didn't get you. You grew up and you went to work in Man's music shop in the High Street.
Yes.
So was that a good experience,
It's
Mum?
a wonderful experience. I learnt such a lot and met so many lovely people, and I used to love it because we used to take people into little booths to play records so they could make a correct
78.
choice.
78 records.
Yeah.
Oh, big 12-inch ones.
Yeah.
Right.
as
So
well.
you left Man's music shop, Mum. You went to Wood's factory where you met
Daddy.
our dad,
Yes, I met my husband
Dennis
there.
Conway. So Dad then left Woods and became a policeman.
Yes, we got married and we needed somewhere to live, and so we joined the police force.
Okay.
Well,
And
because he was really concerned about the people of Colchester,
Well, he
Mum.
probably was, but it was a good job in those days.
he wanted a house,
And
basically.
he wanted a house.
Right.
So you were posted, Mum, almost overseas.
Oh,
You went to Dovercourt, which seemed like a million miles away to you.
I was so homesick again. It was dreadful. I wanted my dad.
So
There was
photograph
nobody like my dad.
number 12, Patrick, please.
So this is moving on. So you got my older brother, Steve, and you were expecting
you.
me.
Yeah.
So this is the 31st of January 1953. What happened?
Well, we were flooded out. But fortunately enough, I wasn't in that house that night.
So where's our house on that one?
Near the telegraph pole.
The white pole.
Yeah.
The white pole. Yeah.
So,
But yes, so we didn't. I wasn't actually in the house, which is just as well, because if I'd have been there, I'd have been there.
where were you then?
I was in Colchester. It was Dennis's long weekend off, and we came home to Colchester for the weekend. But they said, don't bring your wife and baby home because there's water in the house. But I just thought that was a little drop of water on the floorboards or something. We had water up to the picture rails in those houses. And if I'd have been there, I would have been terrified because...
Patrick's pointing out for you there. Look.
People had to get out their bedroom windows into rowing boats. And I'd got a baby and I was expecting Philip, so that was very fortunate I wasn't there. But I didn't go back into that house till after Philip was born. And they used to refer to him as the flood victim because they didn't know I was pregnant when I went, but I came home with a new baby, which was him.
Right.
And down at Dovercourt, I had another little boy, Gavin, who was born 2 years afterwards. So I've got my 3 little boys.
Right. So this is Grafton Road. And this is the age of the cinema. So you had a famous visitor to Grafton Road.
Yes, Brian Forbes. Some of you might remember that name. But his sister lived opposite me and she was a great friend of mine. So we used to see Brian in his massive car every now and again.
Wow, amazing. So eventually, after going to various places, you arrived back in Colchester.
Yes.
So do you still love the town, Mum?
I absolutely love the town and everything in it.
Good.
I know they've wrecked a lot of it, but it's still a fantastic town and full of wonderful history.
And you especially like Patrick and Andrew's books.
I do love Patrick. Got all Patrick's books and some of Andrew's as well. Andrew Phillips' books.
And
I love it.
And they are available right here, folks. And so that's it. Mum, thank you very much.